Great. Okay. Please.
Now it's okay.
Now recording that. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I will leave the things like this without.
Right. Okay, sir. Right. Right. Okay. So I hope you can see the Excel screen now. Can you see the Excel screen? So we are back to the same place where we were. Right. Okay. So now tell me, how to calculate the working capital cycle? I mean, it's a very easy question. How to calculate the working capital cycle? You know, basically for the working capital cycle, you have to calculate three figures: debtors collection period, inventory turnover period, and creditors turnover period. So how to calculate the debtors collection period? Debtors collection period. So I will just substitute the figures. Average debtors 500,000. Annual credit sales 3 million into 360. So exactly 60 days. That is why I am taking 360, because then you can take round off figures. Debtors collection period 60 days exactly. So see what I did here. I divided average debtors by annual credit sales and multiplied by 360. Then inventory turnover period. Inventory turnover period. How I calculate that? I take average inventory, divide by what? Average inventory divided by cost of sales. So how do I calculate cost of sales? My sales 3 million, margin 25%. So cost of sales is 75%. This into 75%. So that into 360. 30 days. Inventory turnover period exactly 30 days. Are you following me? Are you following me? Yes or no? Right. Okay, inventory turnover period 30 days. Then creditors turnover period. Creditors turnover period. We take average creditors, divide by again cost of sales, that is sales into 75%. Why I take 75%? Because gross profit margin is 25%. So cost of sales is 75% into 360. So creditors turnover period 45 days. So basically, all these are days. Working capital cycle, beautifully I can calculate. Working capital cycle 60 plus 30 minus 45. So exactly working capital cycle 45 days. So this is the answer for the first part. Now working capital requirement. How I calculate the working capital requirement? The working capital requirement is not difficult at all. You know how to calculate working capital. Basically, what we do, current assets minus current liabilities. Current assets minus current liabilities. So what are the current assets? I have two current assets here. Let's say debtors 500,000. Inventory, 187,500. So total current assets 687,500. Current liabilities only 281,250. So working capital requirement is difference. Working capital requirement is 406,250 rupees. Although these are average figures, I mean, since it's an example, you can take. But normally we take the closing figures, but here, since opening figures are also given, for you to calculate the average figures, we can take the average figures. So working capital requirement during the year average is 406,250. So how much is the finance cost? How much is the finance cost? We know this is a working capital requirement. Working capital requirement. How much is the interest rate for the year? Interest rate for the year is 15%. And our working capital cycle, or the period for which we need finances, is 45 days. So we multiply by 45, divide by 360. Our finance cost is 7,617. Is this clear? Is this clear? So always, now since I'm using an Excel sheet, in the absence of a whiteboard, always look at the formula, right? I mean, you are not new to Excel. All of you know Excel. And you should know Excel. If you want to work as accountants in the future, you should know Excel. So you have to get used to working with Excel. So see what I have done here. I have taken the working capital requirement, multiplied by the interest rate. So if I leave at that point, I am calculating the finance cost for 1 year. My working capital cycle is only 45 days. So I am taking only for 45 days this cost. So when I take this cost only for 45 days, it will be 7,617.19. So this is the finance cost, annual finance cost for the working capital requirement of 406,250. Is this clear? Okay, I hope it is clear, right? That's about working capital, right? So now let's move into the presentation again. So after working capital, after these ratios, days to collection period, days to sell inventory, there should be another ratio which we discussed, creditors turnover period. We move into capital structure and solvency, gearing ratios. Now, gearing ratio you can calculate in many different ways. One way of calculating the gearing ratio is by taking total liabilities and dividing that by shareholders' equity. So we divide total liabilities by shareholders' equity. So nothing new. Another way of calculating gearing is you take long-term liabilities only. Without taking current liabilities, you take only long-term liabilities and divide by shareholders' equity. Times interest earned. Times interest earned, how we calculate that? We take profit before interest and tax and divide by the interest expense. Profit before interest and tax divided by interest expense. Then you know how many times your interest are covered, or the level of profitability to cover the interest. If interest cover is more, is it a good indicator or a bad indicator? If the interest cover is more, if the interest cover is more, is it a good indicator or a bad indicator? What does it mean? If the interest cover is high, let's see, it's a good indicator. So what does it mean if the interest cover is high? If the interest cover is high, it means the company is operationally profitable. The company has operating profits. If the interest cover is less, it means the other way. It means the company is not very profitable, or its operating costs are very high, or fixed costs are very high. So interest cover is a good indicator of operating profitability. If it is high, it's a good indicator. If it is low, it's a bad indicator. All these are solvency ratios. All these are solvency ratios. So is this clear? Is this clear? Right. So again, let me go to the Excel sheet. Let me give you some figures. Now let's take for example, we calculate gearing ratio in this way. This is the normal way we calculate the gearing ratio. We take long-term liabilities. LTL means long-term liabilities. We divide by equity. We divide by equity. Now let me take some figures. Now let me say long-term liability. We'll say gearing ratio we calculate like this normally. Long-term liabilities we divide by total funds. Total funds. Total long-term funds. Total long-term funds. Let me take some figures. Long-term liabilities, let me say 100. Equity also 100. So long-term liability is 100, equity also 100. Total long-term funds. Okay, total long-term funds 200. Now, if I calculate the gearing ratio in this way, if I calculate the gearing ratio in this manner, how much it would be? It would be long-term liabilities 100 divided by total funds 200. 0.5 times, or as a percentage, I can say 50%. Remember always, as a norm, long-term liabilities. If you are to say you are a solvent company, that your liabilities are less, that your gearing is less, always remember long-term liabilities can't be more than the value of equity. Or long-term liabilities as a percentage of total funds can't be more than 50%. As a norm, we can say LTL out of long-term funds cannot be more than 50%. If it is more than 50%, the company is not solvent. Normally we say the company is not solvent if it is more than 50% of total long-term funds. Now, another way of calculating gearing ratio is, now this is one way, another way of calculating gearing ratio is long-term liabilities divided by equity. So if I calculate gearing in that manner, long-term liabilities would be 100, equity would be 100. That will be one time for 100%. Remember always what I said, long-term liabilities can't be more than equity. So the maximum value, as a norm, we are saying maximum value of long-term liabilities is limited to, or should be limited to, the value of equity. Now, based on the figures that I have taken, you will see long-term liabilities are exactly equal to equity. So basically, if you calculate gearing as long-term liabilities divided by equity, ratio will be 100%. That is all right. Means it has reached the maximum level. It has reached the maximum level. If you take long-term liabilities as a percentage of long-term liabilities as a percentage of total funds, it can't be more than 50%. Now, is that clear? Is that clear? Long-term liabilities as a percentage of total funds can't be more than 50%. Long-term liabilities as a percentage of equity can't be more than 100%. Basically, it means the same thing. If long-term liabilities as a percentage of equity is 100%, it means as a percentage of total funds 50%. Are we clear? Right. So I will write it here. If long-term liabilities as a percentage of equity is 100%, it means the long-term liabilities as a percentage of total funds. Basically the same thing. So always remember, if you want to be called solvent, so if the company is solvent, its gearing has to be maintained below 50% out of total funds, or it has to be limited to 100% of the value of equity. It can't be more than the value of equity, or it can't be more than 50% of the total funds. Are we clear? Are we clear? If you want to clarify anything, you can ask. I'm going very slowly. Yes. Fine. So we'll go back to the presentation. So after gearing ratios, we come to profitability ratios, ROI, return on investment. Now, I'll come to return on investment. Let's first calculate return on various assets. Now, tell me first, what do you mean by return? What do you mean by return? In accounting, what do you mean by return? In accounting, what do you mean by return? Return means what? Does it mean the revenue? No, in accounting, return means what? Profits. So when you say return on investment or return on assets, always remember to refer to profits. To refer to profits. And now say, for example, you calculate this ratio return on assets. Now see how the ratio has been defined here. So return on assets equal in the numerator net income plus interest expense into 1 minus T. Net income plus interest expense into 1 minus T. Now what is this? What is this net income plus net income? You are adding that interest expense, but you are taking the after tax profit. You deduct tax, but you add back interest. So what is this numerator? Can someone define? Return normally means profits, but here we have taken net profit. So the net profit we have added interest, but we have deducted tax. So we have taken interest net of tax. What is this? How do we call it? Okay, tax shield, but how do we call this entire numerator? There's a name. How do we call this entire numerator? Okay, let me take an example. Again, I'll go back to the Excel sheet. Now say the company is having, let's say, PBIT, profit before interest and tax, rupees million, 100. Then let's say interest, 10. So we know PBT, 90. Let's say tax rate, 30%. Tax would be how much? 30% on 90. That will be 27. So profit after tax, PAT. That will be 90 minus 27, 63. Now, I take you back to the presentation. This numerator means which value? This numerator means which value? Net income plus interest expense into 1 minus tax rate. Numerator means how much? Okay, someone is saying EBIT. Let's see. EBIT is, remember, PBIT. So if you say it is this figure, that is wrong. It is not that. So net income. We know our net income is 63. Interest expense. I'm taking the figures from the formula, okay, or definition of the formula. Interest expense. We know 10. Tax rate we know 30%. Tax rate 30%. So if I take the numerator in the formula, it should be net income 63 plus interest expense 10 into 1 minus 30%. 70. It should be 70. Now let me see how many of you have got the answer. Okay, you all are giving different definitions, but I wanted the value. Okay, so this is how you calculate the value. Net income, to that net income you are adding interest, but from the interest you are taking the interest after tax benefit, because on the interest the company is getting a tax benefit. So basically you are taking the net interest expense. So net income is 63, net interest is 7, gross interest 10. On the gross interest you are saving tax of 30%. So your tax benefit is 3, net interest is therefore 7. So net income 63, net interest 7. This value is 70. Now my question is, what is the name we can give for this value? what is the name we can give for this value? What is the name we can give for this value? Basically, this is net profit plus net interest. Net profit plus net interest, that is after the tax benefit. So what is the definition we can give for this 70? Someone is saying free cash flow. What is this? Now, free cash flow is something else. Free cash flow, you have to adjust the working capital also. We'll come to free cash flow valuations later. Don't think about free cash flow yet. What is this figure? This is 70. Okay, I want you to define this 70. This is called operating profit before interest, but after tax. This figure is called operating profit you can say, let's say, we can say operating profit before interest after tax. Right. Now, how much is the operating profit? How much is the operating profit? How much is the operating profit? Come on, tell me. How much is the operating profit of this company? At least check, at least type, then I can see an answer. Operating profit is this PBIT. So that is anyway before interest. So on this, how much is the tax? On this, how much is tax? On this, tax is 30%. That is 30. So how much is operating profit after tax? Is 100 minus 30, 70. Is this clear? Is this clear? Is this clear? So take a look at the example I have taken here. In the example I have taken PBIT. PBIT means operating profit. So that minus interest PBT into tax rate, tax liability, and profit after tax. But then if we take exactly the figures from the P&L, that is figures from this example P&L, and apply the formula that we have seen in the presentation, we get an answer of 70. I told you this answer of 70 is basically net profit plus net interest. Net profit plus net interest. And also we can say it as operating profit before interest, but after tax. Anyway, operating profit is before interest, but after tax. So operating profit is PBIT, that is 100. Tax is 30%. So basically this answer is 70. This 70 is same as this 70. So we can do another reconciliation. We know net profit. We know net profit is 63. Different ways of getting the same answer. Okay. Net profit is 63. PAT is that. And net interest. Net interest is 10 into 1 minus 30%. 7. So these two together, you get the same answer. So 3 different computations. So this is one computation. I'll separate so you will not mix up. So this is one way of getting the answer. You take net profit and you add the net interest. The net profit, you add net interest. That is one way. This is the other way. From the operating profit, you take the tax liability out of it and you take the difference, that is operating profit 100, tax 30. So difference is 70. So this is the other way. Whichever the way is correct. I mean, it's up to you. Different ways of getting the same answer. End of the day, the answer has to be 70. So what is 70? You can simply remember it as net profit plus net interest. Interest after the tax shield. Are we clear? Are we clear? So three different ways of getting the same answer. I mean, you can expect a question from the ratio calculations, okay? I have done this subject for many years. You can expect a question from the ratio analysis. For the numerator, I was explaining the numerator, net income plus interest after the tax shield. So basically, net income plus net interest divided by average total assets. So return on assets in that way. Now return on equity, ROE, return on common equity. There, of course, we take what? Now for equity or for ordinary shareholders, what belongs is the net profit. Therefore, we take the net profit after interest after tax. We take net profit divided by equity. So that is an easy calculation. Okay, on operating performance, of course, there are many ratios that you can calculate. GP margin, you know how to calculate that. Sales minus cost of sales over sales. Operating profit margin, that is PBIT or EBIT, income from operations divided by sales. Net profit margin, net income divided by sales. Then we come to asset utilization. Asset utilization, basically, the utilization of assets. In other words, when you are utilizing the assets, how much of a revenue we can generate. So basically, cash turnover of the assets, turnover or sales divided by average cash or cash equivalents. The accounts receivable turnover, how much of a turnover we generated from accounts receivable, sales divided by average accounts receivable. Inventory turnover, with regard to inventory, of course, the numerator would be not turnover, cost of sales. So cost of sales divided by average inventory. Working capital turnover, sales divided by average working capital. Property, plant and equipment turnover, PPE turnover, turnover divided by average PPE. Total asset turnover, again turnover divided by average total assets. Basic ratios. Then we'll come to market measures. Ratios with regard to market prices, right? Price to book value or price earnings ratio. How we calculate? I will take a different Excel sheet here. Price earnings. Price earnings is basically MPS over EPS. Market price per share over earnings per share. Then, of course, earnings yield. Earnings yield is the opposite of price earnings. Earnings yield, that will be EPS over MPS. EPS over MPS. Then we have dividend yield. Dividend yield, that is DPS over MPS. Then we have dividend payout. Dividend payout. Dividend payout, that is basically DPS over EPS. Then we have price to book value. Price to book value, that is MPS over book price or book value. So these are the market ratios. Are we clear? I mean, not difficult calculations. Are we clear? I can give an example. Let's say PAT. PAT is 1 million. Okay. PAT 100 million. Let's say PAT 100 million rupees. Let's say number of shares. Number of shares 5 million. Then let's take MPS, market price per share, 40 rupees. Let's take DPS, 10 rupees. Book value. Book value of a share, let's say 10 rupees. Book value of a share, 10 rupees. DPS, let's make it 5. So how we calculate these ratios? MPS is how much? 40. MPS divided by EPS. So EPS, how we calculate? PAT, profit after tax, divided by number of shares. So price earnings is 2 times. All these are times. Okay. Price earnings 2 times. Price earnings 2 times. So you can see the calculation here again. MPS, what is in blue color is MPS. MPS divided by EPS. So how we calculate EPS? Profit after tax divided by number of shares. So price earnings 2 times. Earnings yield, opposite. EPS, it is 100 million divided by 5 million. EPS is 20 divided by MPS. That is 0.5 times. So you can say 50% also. Both are correct. 0.5 times of 50%. Then dividend yield. How much of a dividend? DPS over MPS. 0.125 times. So you can put it as a percentage. 12.5%. Dividend payout. That is DPS over EPS. 25%. 0.25 times or 25%. Then price to book value. It is market price, that is 40 divided by 10. Price to book value 4 times or 400%. Right. Are we clear? So, sorry, there were a couple of questions. Sir, why do we factor interest tax shield in return on assets? Isn't interest rates determined by the financing strategy rather than the investing strategy of a company? Or return on assets. When, it's like this. When you calculate, always return means a profit. So when you calculate the return on assets, we calculate the operating profit basically. Operating profit after tax. So in my example also, I will take you back to that example. See, my operating profit is this sheet 3. Operating profit is 100. See, operating profit is 100. So I'm taking 30% off. So this is operating profit after tax. So operating profit after tax, I'm dividing by total assets. Basically, we don't take interest. We don't take interest. So what is the other question? There was another question. So is DPS includes both dividend paid and proposed dividends? Yeah, it includes both dividend per share. Per share, how much of dividends? Dividend yield. Okay, dividend yield means, now let's say for example, if a shareholder invests 40 rupees, now market price is 40 rupees. If a person invests 40 rupees, he is only getting dividends of 5. Basically, what is his dividend yield? He invests 40, but he is getting return of 5. His return is only 12.5 times. Net interest. Okay, net interest is gross interest. Now, basically, what you have to understand is interest has a tax saving benefit. Okay, a company might pay interest, but on that interest, the company can save tax. So always when you take the interest cost of a company, you have to take the net interest. If the gross interest is 10, on that 10, in my previous example, you are having a benefit of 30%. So gross interest is 10, tax benefit is 30%, that is 30% on that 10, 3 rupees. So therefore net interest cost is 7. Is that clear? Have I answered your question? Have I answered your question? So someone was asking about, okay, fine. Anything else? Any other questions? Are the dividend yield and no, DPO, dividend payout. Dividend payout is correct. Dividend payout is always from the EPS or always from your profits. Your earnings per share is, now earnings per share we can calculate here. EPS. Since it comes often, I will calculate here. EPS is basically profit after tax divided by number of shares. EPS is 20. So out of 20 EPS, you are giving a dividend of 5. So dividend payout is basically 5 divided by 20. See, 5 divided by 20, 25%. Dividend yield. No, the dividend yield is 5 divided by 40. Dividend is 5. Dividend is 5. 5 divided by 40. And so any more questions? These are beautiful ratios. All logical ratios. And also now to test your knowledge, now tell me from these figures, if MPS is not given, how you calculate the MPS? If MPS is, now I have given the MPS, but if MPS is not given, how you calculate the MPS? How you calculate the MPS? As finance students, you should know these things, valuation techniques. How you calculate the MPS? If it is not given, now here I have given, but if it is not given, how you calculate? Can someone tell me? MPS would be price earnings into EPS. Now, how much is the price earnings of this company? Price earnings is 2 times. So 2 times into EPS is MPS. Can you see? Everything is connected. All the calculations are interconnected. If you know the EPS and MPS, yes, you can calculate the price earnings. If you know the price earnings and EPS, you can calculate the MPS. Everything is connected. Is this clear? Is this clear? So remember these calculations, okay? I mean, not very difficult calculations, but very important calculations. So this is the ratio. This is the value, okay? The ratio. This is the formula. These are the values. Fine. Okay, so now we can go back to the presentation. But in the presentation, if you take from now onwards, I mean, we finished the ratio discussion. Basically, in the presentation from now on, they have moved into certain valuation techniques. But let me ask you, have you discussed valuation? Have you studied valuation in your studies in the university? Have you studied valuation topics in the university? Now, this is the third year, second semester, at least in the first semester or in the previous 2 years. Have you studied valuation techniques? Have you studied valuation techniques? Remember, now both Anil sir as well as I told you last week, ultimate objective of this particular subject is to come for a company valuation. In other words, by doing all the analysis, by calculating all the ratios, we should come to a point where we can apply the knowledge to calculate the company value. So now, I think in the next few slides, they have put here in the presentation slides, they have put here certain ratio, not ratio, certain valuation techniques, certain valuation calculations. So how familiar are you with regard to these valuations? Dividend discount model, say for example, dividend discount model, free cash flow model of valuation, residual income model of valuation. How familiar are you? Okay, you have valuation subject in this semester. Okay, now if that is the case, I will not rush to that. Anyway, we will have to discuss this, but today I will not rush to that. Okay. Instead of that, let me discuss with you a different question. A different question from another syllabus. Okay, from the started syllabus. This is from the strategic level. I will pick this question because this question is involving the ratios. I don't think any of you have come to the strategic level of started yet. This is from strategic level corporate finance, risk management. Not a very difficult question, but I will pick this question because this question is involving financial statement analysis and also ratio calculation. Right. I don't know whether you can see the screen. Can you see the screen? Can you see the screen? Okay, fine. Right. Now, this is the question I want to discuss today. Okay. Answer is there, but we'll go to the question. Now, this is the question on the financial analysis. AB Limited has recently introduced a formal scheme of long-range planning. At a meeting called to discuss the first draft plans, the following estimates emerged. Revenue in the current year reached 10 million rupees and forecast for the next 5 years are 10.6 million, 11.4 million, 12.4 million, 13.6 million, and 15 million. The ratio of profit after tax for the year to revenues, in other words, basically profit margin, okay, profit after tax for the year to revenues is 10%, and this is expected to continue throughout the planning period. Total assets less current liabilities will remain at around 125% of sales. So total assets minus current liabilities. That will remain at 125% of sales. The summary statement of financial position for AB Limited is as follows. So you are given the summary statement of financial position or the balance sheet for current year. Non-current assets, net working capital. So total assets less current liabilities 12.5 million. Share capital 1 million, retained earnings 7,750,000, total equity 8,750,000, 10% redeemable debentures 3,750,000, total equals to 12,500,000. Now below that it says it was also suggested that if profits rise, in other words, if profits increase, dividends should increase by at least the same percentage. An earnings retention rate of 50% to be maintained. In other words, the payout ratio is 50%. Earnings retention is 50%. The ratio of long-term borrowing to long-term funds. We are coming to gearing. Okay. The ratio of long-term borrowing to long-term funds, which is debt plus equity, is limited to 30%, which also happens to be the current gearing level of the company. Required, prepare a financial analysis of the draft long-range plan and suggest policy and prepare a financial analysis of the draft long-range plan and suggested policies for dividends, retained earnings, and gearing. So basically, we need to talk about the three policies about dividends, retained earnings, and gearing. Right. So take a look at this question again. Before we work it out, take a look at this question. Myself. Sorry. When you are ready, tell me. I will work out the question. But before that, please go through the question. Or if you want to take down, or if you want to take a photo of the question, you can do so. I'll try to share the document. But if you want to take a photo now, you can do that. So are we ready? Are we ready? Shall I start? Shall I start the question? Or do you want to work it out? I mean, something similar to this. I won't say the same question, but this is a very good question where you can analyze the different policies. And also you can see as to whether the gearing policies are practical. The company's selected gearing policies, you can evaluate and see whether those policies are practical. Shall we start? Shall we start the question? Right, okay. We'll start the question on a different sheet. First, let me put details, okay? So can you show the second half of the question, okay? Can you see? Can you see it now? So when you are ready, tell me, right? Right, okay. So we will go back to the Excel sheet. Okay, what it says is current year revenue is 10 million, but for the next 5 years, you are given a forecast. Current year, 1 to 5. Revenue, 10 million, in 10.6, 11.4, 12.4, 13.6, and 15 million. Those are the revenues. Then profit after tax is 10%, PAT 10%. That they will maintain throughout. Then of course, total assets less current liabilities, 125%. Total assets minus current liabilities, 125% of revenue. Then we are told about the company's policies. Retention ratio 50%. Retention ratio 50%. Retention ratio is 50%. And then debt, long-term borrowing to long-term funds. Long-term liabilities to long-term funds, 30%. Okay, so these are the details. Right. So let's start working on this question. I'll take the same headings. For revenue, you can take the same figures. PAT, profit after tax. Then total assets minus current liabilities. 125% of respective turnover, right? Right. Now let's come to, oh, this is total asset. Now tell me one thing, right? Total assets minus current liabilities should be equal to what? In the balance sheet, total assets minus current liabilities should be equal to what? Come on, tell me. In the balance sheet, total assets minus current liabilities should be equal to what? Come on, tell me. Total assets minus current liability should be equal to equity plus long-term debt. Absolutely. Oh, I can simply say long-term funds. Long-term funds. It should equal to long-term funds. Right. Now this is the maximum long-term. Okay, this is the target long-term funds. Okay, what is this? Okay, plus long-term liabilities. We can say long-term funds. This is the target. Target. So let's have a look at what will happen to equity. How much is the current year equity? Current year equity is 8,750,000. Why come to? Yeah. Let's say current year equity 8,750,000. So can someone tell me how much is the equity next year? Year one. What will happen to equity next year? Next year equity will be current year equity plus next year retained profits. So how we calculate that? This is opening equity plus next year PAT 1,060,000 from that retention ratio. So next year equity 9,280,000. And it continues. It continues like that. Can you see? From profit after tax, you're retaining 50%. You're retaining 50%. Retaining 50%. Retaining 50%. Here, if you want, you can put dividends also. Every year dividends also. Here, I will put it here. PAT, I will bring it to this point here. Dividends. Every year dividends would be 50% of profits. If you are retaining 50%, dividends are 50%. These are dividends. Those are dividends. Balance is retained profits. That is added to equity. Is this clear up to this point? Any clarifications you need, please ask now. Any clarifications you need, please ask. Don't hesitate to ask, please. I always encourage for you to ask questions. So if you need to clarify anything, please ask now. If you need to clarify anything, please ask now. Come on, tell me. If there are any doubts, you can ask now. Are you all okay up to this point? Can you show how you calculated equity again? Okay. So this is the opening equity that is given. Okay, that is given in the question. So year one equity. Year one equity will be opening equity plus year one retained profits. Year one retained profits are 50% of that year's profit. As simple as that. Every year it continues, same formula. Here. Total assets minus current liability is 125% because it is given in the question. Total assets minus current liability is 125%. That is given in the question. So basically, I am applying the same percentage throughout. Any questions? Come on, tell me. Any questions? Please ask any questions. Come on, come on. I need the feedback. Come on, no response. Is everything clear? I mean, these are not ad hoc figures, okay? These are all based on the assumptions or what we need to assume when we do this question based on the question itself. Right. So revenue PAT is 10%, that is continuous across. Then dividends are 50% of the profits. Then total assets minus current liabilities 125% of revenue. All these are given in the question. Long-term funds are equal to total assets minus current liabilities. So if this is X, this should also be X. So same figures. Equity. Equity basically opening equity plus next year's retained profits. So it continues. Right. Now, gearing. Gearing. Now, about the gearing ratio, see, gearing they want to maintain at 30%. So basically, equity has to be 70%. So I can take this divided by 70 multiplied by 30. That is the value of not gearing, that is the value of long-term liabilities. So if equity is 70%, see here the ratio is 30%, which means equity 70%. So if equity is 70%, long-term liabilities are 30%. So I can continue. So now I can calculate equity plus long-term liabilities. Now what will happen? So this is exactly 12.5 million. But in the future years, what will happen? In the future years, if you want to maintain these assumptions, these ratios, equity plus long-term liabilities will be 13,257,000. But as per the balance sheet, it has to be limited to 13,250,000. Someone is asking something? Oh, I repeat again, okay? In year one, total value of equity and long-term liabilities will be 13,257,000, but you have a target. You want to restrict it to 13,250,000. See, this is a target. You want to restrict it to 13,250,000 long-term funds. But if you want to maintain these assumptions, if you want to maintain these trends, you need 13,257,000. So basically, in year one, you have a shortfall. Let's say excess or shortfall. No, we'll say excess. Excess is negative. We'll take excess. Basically, you are exceeding the target by 7,143. So which means you need more money. I will put the formula here. Excess means additional funding. Additional funding required. So I can continue. So this is the other way. So this is a shortfall. We can pay excess. Yeah. 178,571, 542,000, 1,071,000, 1,750,000. So basically, what this says is this. So in year one, so year zero is okay. Year zero or current year is perfectly balancing because both these are equal to each other. Both these are equal to each other. In year one, this is your target. But equity plus long-term liabilities total is 30,257,000. So basically, there's a small difference. Is this correct? That is correct. Excess is a slight excess, 7,143. But if you take years 2, 3, 4, and 5, it is exceeding. It is exceeding the target. So basically, what it says is in year 2 and year 3 and year 4 and year 4, in all these years, these are the red years. In all these years, equity and long-term liability, if you want to maintain these ratios, equity and long-term liability will not be enough to meet your target. Will not be enough to meet your target. In other words, we can say from year 2 to year 5, from year 2 to year 5, total of equity and long-term liabilities as per the assumptions are not sufficient. Are not sufficient to meet the target, to meet the target capital structure. Meet the target capital structure. So we'll say like this, from year 2 to year 5, the total of equity and long-term liabilities as per the target capital structure, as per the target capital structure is not enough. To meet the financing requirement. Financing requirement. From year 2 to year 5, the total of equity and long-term liabilities as per the target capital structure is not enough to meet the financing requirement. So basically what we are saying is in year 2, to finance all your assets, total assets minus current liabilities, you need this much of money. But as per your target capital structure, which is 70% equity, 70% equity and 30% debt. This is your target capital structure. As per your target capital structure, in year 2, you can only have 14,071,000. So you are falling short. Year 3 also, you need 15,500,000, but as per your target capital structure, you can only have this much. So you are falling short. Year 4 also same, year 5 also same. Is this clear? Is this clear? As per your target capital structure, you don't have enough funds, enough money to finance the assets. Is that clear? If you have any doubts, please tell me. How to get LTL? You mean this 30%? This 30%, how we get this 30% is because it says equity 70%. Question says equity, in a sense, it says, I think I have put the assumptions here. See, the assumptions clearly say long-term liabilities out of long-term funds 30%, which means equity 70%. No need to mention that. If long-term liabilities out of long-term funds are 30%, equity means 70%. So equity is 70%. This is 30%. So 70% plus 30% is the total capital available based on the capital structure. But that is not enough to finance the assets. That is what we are saying here. These are the shortfalls. Is that clear? Is that clear? Come on, any questions? Is that clear? Basically, we are saying the summary of the question is that the company is unable to finance the assets from year 2 to year 5. Right, now tell me, in year 2 and year 3 they can do something. What is that? At least they can do something. What is that? In year 2 and year 3 they can do something. What is that? Come on, tell me. In year 2 and year 3 they can do something. What is that? Now look at the shortfall, 178,000, 542,000. So in order to cover this shortfall in these 2 years, they can do something. What is that? They can not pay dividends. They can hold back the dividends. See, in year 2 dividends 570,000, year 3 dividends 620,000. If they don't pay dividend, what will happen? That will get added to equity. If this is added to equity, then what will happen to long-term liabilities? That will also increase. So if they don't pay a dividend in year 2 and year 3, they can cover the shortfalls. So can they do the same thing in year 4 and year 5? Can they do the same thing in year 4 and year 5? They can't. Year 2 shortfall 178,000, they can cover from this. Year 3 shortfall 542, they can cover from this. Year 4 shortfall is more than this. Year 5 shortfall is even more than this. So in year 2 and year 3, we can say, if they don't pay a dividend, they can cover the shortfall. Right? So we can say in year 2 and year 3. In year 2 and year 3, if they don't pay a dividend, they can cover the shortfall. However, that is not possible in year 4 and year 5. In year 4 and 5. Now, is that clear? Now, let's talk, okay? Is that point clear? Year 2 deficit, year 3 deficit, they can cover if they don't pay dividend. But they can't do the same in year 4 and year 5. Are we clear? Right. So in year 4 and year 5, what they have to do? In year 4 and year 5, what they have to do? Come on. In year 4 and year 5, what they have to do? Come on, tell me. In order to cover this shortfall in year 4 and year 5, what they have to do? Come on, tell me. What they have to do? They'll have to raise new capital, isn't it? They'll have to go for new capital. Now, if they go for debt capital, what will happen? I mean, you must be knowing about the basic features of debt capital and equity capital. If they go for debt capital, of course, on interest, they can save tax. There's a tax benefit on interest. Cost of debt is always less than cost of equity. So they can go for debt capital, but then if they go for debt capital, they increase in the financial risk of the company. They increase in the leverage. They increase in the bankruptcy cost. And also they increase in the risk to equity holders. The cost of equity will also increase because of that. And if they go for more equity capital, then what will happen? Their cost will be more because compared to debt, equity is more expensive. So in year 4 and year 5, they're going to face a problem. They're going to face a problem if they want to maintain this assumption. We can say in year 4 and year 5. In year 4 and year 5, the company has to go for new capital. New capital can be in the form of debt, I will say, and stroke O, okay? Debt and no equity. So it can be mixed also. Debt and no equity. Because now what you understand is preference shares also be categorized as debt, okay? Preference shares, although we call them as shares, they are kind of hybrid. They have the characteristics of ordinary shares as well as debt. So technically speaking, they are debt. Preference shares we normally consider as another type of debt. Or new capital can be in the form of either debt or equity, or debt and stroke or equity. Right. Now in year 2 and 3, so also we will say cost of equity more expensive. Cost of equity is more expensive than cost of debt. However, cost of debt is increasing the financial risk of the company. You have to balance both financial risk of the company. And also we are telling, earlier we told in year 2 and 3, you can defer the dividends or you can not pay dividends. So if you don't pay dividend, you will disappoint who? You will disappoint the ordinary shareholders. In year 2 and 3, if a dividend is not paid, ordinary shareholders will be disappointed. Are we clear? Any questions? Let's see. So then we have to still maintain our capital structure. Okay, so what I was saying, so then we have to still maintain our capital structure, yes. But you can increase equity. You can go for new equity. You can go for new equity, and at the same time, you can go for debt also. Because if you want to maintain the same capital structure, now that is what the point is this. The point is, if you want to maintain these assumptions, if you want to maintain this capital structure, you will never be able to meet the target. Now that is why we are saying these objectives are conflicting. You can't synchronize these objectives. These objectives are conflicting objectives. One is affecting another. So if you want to maintain all these assumptions, now I have listed the assumptions above. If you want to maintain a total assets minus current liabilities at 125%, retention ratio of 50%, long-term liabilities out of long-term funds at 30%, you will never be able to do. These assumptions are not practical. Point is, these assumptions are not practical. All these assumptions together we can't maintain. So one has to give in. One has to give in if you want to meet your target. Otherwise, always you will fall short. Okay, in year 2 and 3, we can say don't pay a dividend. Don't pay a dividend, save that money. And then, of course, we can say you can cover that shortfall, but then, of course, you will disappoint the ordinary shareholders. And if they are disappointed, what will happen? They will sell the shares. The market price of the company will come down. It will crash. You can go for new equity. You can go for new debt. If you go for new debt, it will be cheaper, but it will increase the financial risk. If you go for new equity, it will be more expensive. So all those things you need to consider. Are we clear? Are we clear? It's a good discussion. I really like this way of communicating. I really like that you are asking questions and clarifying your doubts then and there. Any clarifications needed? As I told you, I don't want to discuss the valuations. I don't want to discuss the valuations right now since you all are still studying that. But anyway, remember, as a part of this course study, we will learn valuations. We will learn valuations in the sense, not entire valuations, but the company valuations we will learn. Company valuations usually based on the residual income model, RI model. So since you all haven't studied it yet, I don't want to touch on the valuation. Tell me anything else which you need to clarify on the ratios, the ratio analysis. You can ask any question. If you want to clarify anything, you can ask about a particular ratio, about a calculation, about a numerator, denominator, anything you can ask. Now, with regard to working capital, do you know these two terms, over trading and over capitalization? Over trading and over capitalization. Two terms, different meanings. What do you mean by over trading? What do you mean by over trading? What do you mean by over trading? Over trading means what? You're trying to trade more. You're trying to do more businesses than what is possible. How you are going to do more businesses than what is possible? How you are going to do it? Think practically. You are going to do more businesses than what is possible. So how you are going to do it? You are going to follow an aggressive working capital management policy. I can say this results from an aggressive working capital management policy. So what do you mean by aggressive working capital management policy? Here you try to sell more. Say a company tries to sell more. Company tries to sell more, often by giving discounts. Often by giving discounts. Lengthy credit periods. And stocks a lot of items. So obviously what will happen? See what will happen now? The company tries to sell more. They're giving discounts. Of course, you will have expenses in the P&L. then they are giving lengthy credit periods. Then what will happen? You will not collect money immediately. You will have to borrow. You have to pay interest. And also some of these people might not pay later. They will go bankrupt. And also you will stock a lot of items. You will have a huge inventory cost, stock holding cost. Some of these stocks might not be usable after some times. And all these things, since you don't have money, you purchase on credit terms from suppliers. So you will have a huge amount of creditors. A huge amount of creditors. Since you don't have money to pay immediately, you will buy on credit. So basically, overtrading results in a large value of inventory, a large value of debtors, and a large value of creditors. Large value of creditors. This is debtors. Large value of debtors. Large value of inventory, large value of debtors, large value of creditors. But what you have to understand is, creditors can ask money at any time. Creditors can ask money at any time because it's a current liability. So if they ask money and if you don't have money to pay them, then of course you'll be declared bankrupt. You might not have money to pay them because you have sold your goods on credit terms, lengthy credit terms. And you may have sold to people who can't pay back. So these people might not pay you back and they might go into bankrupt. So if you have given lengthy credit periods, you may borrow. Additional expenses will come to the P&L. Discounts will come to the P&L. You will suffer losses. You will not have money. And on top of that, if creditors ask money immediately, you will not have anything to give them. So the company will be declared bankrupt. So overtrading is not a good situation to be in. Overtrading should be avoided at any cost. So if you are overtrading, you will have lengthy collection periods, lengthy turnover periods, and also lengthy turnover periods of creditors. Is that clear? Is that clear? There will be lengthy turnover periods, lengthy inventory turnover, lengthy debtors collection, lengthy creditors turnover. Problem is, you can't drag the payment of creditors if they ask their money. If they ask their money at any moment, then of course you will fall into trouble. You will not have money to pay. You will not be able to do your business. You may have to borrow at excessive interest rates. Then of course you will have to close down the business after some time. Overtrading is not a good situation to be in. Are we clear? Tell me, are we clear? Right. So the other one is overcapitalization. Now, what do you mean by overcapitalization? This is the opposite. This is financing your current assets, financing current assets from long-term liabilities. Now, earlier, remember, in overtrading, you have financed your current assets, which means debtors inventory from current liabilities. That is risky. Now, here what happens? You are financing current assets from long-term liabilities. So, is it a good position to be in? Is it a good position to be in? Is it a good thing? You are financing your current assets from long-term liabilities. You are taking a long-term loan and you are purchasing inventory. Something like that. You are taking a long-term loan and then you give credit to your customers. You finance your working capital from a long-term loan. Is it a good thing? Is it a good thing? Yes or no? Tell me. Overtrading, we know it's not good. Overcapitalization is a good thing. You take a long-term loan and from the proceeds of the long-term loan, you buy inventory. You give other people credit. Is it a good thing? That is also not a good thing. Why? Because on current assets, you are not getting a very high return. On current assets, you are not getting a high return. But on long-term liabilities, you have to pay a high interest cost. Normally, the higher the or normally the longer the credit period, the longer the borrowing period, higher will be the interest cost. On long-term loans, you have to pay a very high interest cost. So if you take a loan with a very high interest, and then if you invest that money in short-term assets, you are not matching the liabilities and assets properly. Overcapitalization is also not a good thing. If you do overcapitalization, remember you are generating lower returns which are not enough to pay back your liabilities. So we can say here, overcapitalization is against the matching. It's against the matching concept. We say it's against the matching concept. Here, the company finances long-term, finances current assets to long-term liabilities. Long-term liabilities are expensive, while current assets are generating a lower return. Therefore, overcapitalization will lead to losses. So normally, what the matching concept says, long-term liabilities you have to invest in where? Long-term liabilities you have to invest in where? Long-term liabilities to be invested in where? Long-term liabilities to be invested in exactly non-current assets. Current liabilities, yes, someone has raised a hand. Current liabilities to be invested in current assets. Oh, this is what the machine concept says, but don't go for too much of current liabilities. In the sense, if you go for too much of current liabilities such as creditors, and if you invest that money in too much of current assets, it will be over trading. So don't go for over trading, don't go for over capitalization also. Avoid these two situations. Both are dangerous. Both are dangerous situations. Are we clear? These are not good positions to be in. Are we clear? Are we clear? Right. So if that is clear, then of course we can finish today's lesson also, because today we wanted to discuss the ratios which we did. We have done an example also, and also I have explained you the difference between overcapitalization and also over trading. This is enough. I mean, we have discussed all the ratios. Maybe next week we can do the ratio analysis question. In the sense, we can calculate some ratios by giving the financial statements of the same company, maybe for 2 years. Yes, someone has raised the hand. About what it is? Okay, so basically what we will do is, so we will wind up today's class now. As I have told you, we can discuss a question about the ratio analysis next week. Maybe we can take a question for 2 years. In a sense, we can take financial statements of 2 years for the same company, and then we can calculate the ratios and compare to see the trends, whether the performance is increasing or decreasing. So is that all right? Is that all right? Is that all right with you? So is that all right? So next week we'll discuss question. We can take the two financial statements of the same company, then we can calculate the ratios and do a comparison. So are we good? Right, okay. So I'm going to stop the class today, hoping that no one else is having any other questions to ask. So we can wind up the class now. Okay, thank you very much then. So we'll meet next week. Okay,
Thank you,
take
sir.
care, good night.